Check, check, 1, 2. I'm starting stream just a little bit early on Mental Health Monday here, just to see that it's going to work. See if it's going to work. Because I'm also trying to upload the Stanley Parable. It's got an hour left, and it's got an hour and 47 minutes left, and it's been going all day, so I'm loath to stop it, but we'll have to see if I can get a stream running or not. It's been going all day, so I'm loath to stop it, but we'll have to see if I can get a stream running or not. It's been going all day. I'm in sync, but my kilobytes are not rocking hard. They're rocking red, so I guess I'm a little bit herky-jerky. It's not the worst in the world. It's in the 2003. It's gone green. It's gone green. 1, 2, check, check, 1, 2. Seems all right, actually. It seems all right. Okay, we're going to roll. We're going to rock and roll. That's a minute of chuffing, trying to decide if it's good enough to stream. Okay, we're going to roll. We're going to rock and roll. That's a minute of and look out for that crying over the Stanley Parable on our channel, Ganji Kid. That's our channel. Actually, I won't mess with that. I'll leave that window like it is. Too scared to touch it. Too scared to mess with it. On our YouTube channel, which is our channel, Ganji Kid. You can also find us here on Twitch, which is happening right now. We upload this, what's happening right now, to the YouTube channel. All the VODs are there. Everything we do. We've been playing Genshin Impact on Twitch. We also stream on YouTube in the day. I didn't today because obviously the Stanley Parable was trying to upload, and I've been editing, and I've been looking after 2 dogs today, and one of them's had the full bin out, the full bin dragged out all across the floor, got everything out of all of the bin, and had a fight with the cat as well. She's had a fight with the cat, so I had a bit of a day today. I've been walking as well. But if you want to see our streams, our live streams, then they're all collected here on the channel Ganji Kid on YouTube. Might change it to Gravekeeper in the future, who knows. Might be worth doing a name change. And then we also do these other videos, Ganji Puka Warrior Media. We do Ganji Cuts, Ganji Arts. If I do a game review or something like that, it goes over on Ganji Arts. Ganji Cuts, I've got a new video about the best of the conspiracy streams. In the daytime in YouTube world, we've been talking about conspiracy streams, the iceberg of conspiracy streams. So I've got a bit of an edit of our best of one of those for the Ganji Cuts. That's going to be going up. After that, other things uploaded. After this. It never stops. This is Mental Health Monday. It's 8 PM GMT. It's Mental Health Monday. That's its own channel there. I do edit things and put them up there. But for the last few weeks, what we've been doing is all on its own playlist. On the stream here. All on its own playlist. I haven't really decided how to edit. We're going to do the last episode today, I think. We've been looking at Dr. K, suicide, specifically Reckful suicide, ethics of online therapy. Dr. K is an online, not therapist, mental health advocate who operates on Twitch and uploads to YouTube. He's pretty good. He's got big numbers now. I remember when he first started, he started talking to all the streamers about how they felt about mental health and stuff in streams. And it was interesting, and it really helped a lot of people. At no point did he specifically say it was therapy, which is why when eventually Byron, who was a streamer who suffered with mental health issues all his life, he spoke to Dr. K, found a kinship with Dr. K, really enjoyed his time talking to him. They did about 6 conversations online and talked to each other extensively offline. And then sadly, Byron killed himself, which was a real tragedy. I like to think that Dr. K was the person who came closest to saving him. But then what happened after all that, because that was, you know, a bit of a big thing, a bit of a big tragedy. You know, rest in peace, Byron, etc. But after all that, this fella, Mr. Girl, released a video 2 months ago called Dr. K Reckless. And it's a bit of a hit piece on Dr. K, utilising mainly his conversations with Reckful, because of the context there, but also his conversations with other streamers. We've covered all that in these 3 videos. That's the history of this conversation that we've been having. You find it on Ganji Kid in the, what do you call them, playlist, in the playlists. So you find that there. We're going to go on today now. We've done this side of things. We've seen the hit piece angle. We're going to look now at the response from Dr. K. His video is called Ethics. It's on Healthy Gamer GG. So we're going to look at that. That's going to be the framework for our conversation today. What we're hoping to see, of course, having already talked about some really difficult things, the difficult things being, is it therapy online? Well, the streamers seem to think they're getting something out of it, but you're not a therapist, and it's blurring the ethical boundary, and they think they're getting therapy and you're not really there as a therapist. And then what happens if they need more help, and this and that, and there's all sorts of these, ethical conversations been going on, aren't there? So hopefully we should see that Dr. K understands that, and then he's actually got a specific point or two to make at the end, and specifically about Byron. So we're going to listen to those, and we're going to just evaluate, because it's an important part of the conversation. It's something that I would feel was missing in the Dr. K Reckless piece. I mean, the Reckless piece was a hit piece, wasn't it? It was a hit piece. So they were going to say negative things, but there was no balance. There was no balance. 6 hours of streaming with Reckful. 6 episodes of hours and hours of streaming with Reckful and other streamers, all to sift through and sort through, to watch, to take something from, to enjoy, to now worry about whatever. But the bottom line is that they didn't, in the Mr. Girl video, they didn't offer any of the alternative angles. It was really specifically that Dr. K has been reckless, and it's led to the death of somebody. I think that's a bit one-sided. We'll see what Dr. K says, but I'd also like to point out, before we go any further, that there's Samaritans 116123 for free. If you feel, you see this on telly, don't you? If you're affected by the things on today's programme, but if you're really feeling a bit down and a bit, and you've come to Mental Health Monday, and what's this guy chuffing on about suicide for? It's making me feel worse. 116123 no, it's for free in the UK. In America, it's Lifeline. It's 988. 988. They're phone lines to call, just to have a conversation if you or anyone you know is feeling particularly distressed. They're the phone lines. And I did want to also say, that's us, Mental Health Monday there. Look, that's us. Go and sub to us. Sub to me, Ganji Kid, on YouTube. It's free. And there's one more thing I wanted to say about this in context, which was that Reckful himself was suffering with mental health. He's discussing it on stream, been through such a lot. It wasn't that Dr. K spoke to him and opened up this big box of stuff. It was something that Byron had already been going through a long time in his life. So when Dr. K finally met him at that final phase, if you just watch the hit piece, it seems like Dr. K brings... we need to understand that Byron had his own story. If you there's a really good documentary on YouTube that I've been recommending, which is by someone called, I think it's Smoosh. It's referenced in the other uploads. So Byron had his own story, his own path, and Dr. K was only present at a very small part towards the end. So I wanted to make that clear as well. I think that's a fair point to make and a clear point to make, yes. Just to separate the two. This Dr. K hit piece seems to point at the fact that Dr. K spoke to him 6 months, then he's killed himself. It wasn't like that. There was a bigger story involved. So I think that's fair to say. So before I clicked that by mistake. Yeah, I'm not going to reference any more of the Mr. Girl stuff. I'm going to go now into the Dr. K stuff. That's the perspective, that's the angle. Let me just check. I'm going to go now into the Dr. K stuff. That's the perspective, that's the angle. Let me just check. I'm going to go now into the Dr. K. Just want to do this. One, two. 1, 2. I don't know, it doesn't look exactly in sync to me. It doesn't look exactly in sync. I could check it on my phone. Just 1 minute. because I want it to be in sync for the broadcast. If you're watching in chat, can you tell me if I'm in sync? Do I look in sync to you? Am I in sync? Oh, that's fine. That looks fine. Yeah, that looks fine. That's off, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Here we go then. Dr. K's response. And bear in mind as well, one final thing to say before we hit the response is that barely noticeable. Okay, slightly off. Is it slightly off like it always is normally like this? Or is it that I am actually out of sync now? Oh, don't worry me. Because I might be slightly off because I just set it. You know, it might be slightly herky-jerky on the kilobytes, or it might be that it might be the not really out of sync. No, okay, we'll just roll. We'll just roll with it. Okay, so Dr. K must have been through the ringer. I want to say that as well. That's one final point I want to make, is that he's been doing his best to promote positive mental health conversation on Twitch. He's obviously making a career out of it as well. He's been through the ringer. Someone that he cares about, that he's made a connection with, has committed suicide. Then all this stuff's been thrown up some months later, like quite some time later, like dredged up and thrown up. This video has gone out. One point to make about that video and that thing is that it's not just that video, and this is why I waited for a while before I made any sort of conversation about this Dr. K thing, because it turned into a drama. Look, there are people with more conversation pieces on it, all happening at the time when it came out. Some people might have been supportive, some might have been negative. I didn't look at any of the rest of it. I wasn't interested in any sort of feedback drama. But I am interested in getting to the bottom of the thing. So that's what we're up to today. Let's start.
Hey y'all, I'd love to talk a little bit about ethics today. There have been several concerns in the community, a lot of questions about whether what we do at Healthy Gamer on stream is therapy, whether what we sort of do at Healthy Gamer as a whole is ethical. And
obviously this is in direct response. Sorry, my music, Calm and Relaxing, is not Calm and Relaxing, this track. So what are you doing? Dr. K ethics, that one. Okay. I can bin this one off now, can't I? Just have that one. So this is a direct response. It's ethics. It's come out like a couple of weeks after all this kerfuffle, all these other videos have been made. And later on in this, he talks specifically about, well, not specifically, but I just want to scroll down and show you. Look, it's all chopped up into these little sections. So we're not going to watch everything. We're going to watch what's pertinent. It's all pertinent. It's all worth a watch. But at the end, he really gets into specifics, but not specifics. He doesn't say this Mr. Girl video, but, you know, this is the response, even if it's not labeled ethics, a response. But
I'd love to sort of talk y'all through the ethics of what we do. The first thing that I kind of want to acknowledge is that most people don't really get an opportunity, even in higher education, to really understand or learn about medical ethics. Medical ethics aren't really a matter of philosophy or even opinion. So just because I believe what we do is ethical doesn't actually make it ethical.
This is really interesting for two reasons. One is that the hit piece, you might say, well, you might say that he's doing the wrong thing, but if it's by the medical ethical book, it doesn't matter if you think this and you think that, and philosophy, let's have a philosophy debate about it. You and your YouTubes and your philosophy discussions, because quite a few streamers and people have those discussions and maybe have had those discussions about this. He's saying it doesn't matter. It's what's by the book, and either I'm by the book or I'm not. And that works two ways, because whatever you say about what is therapy and what isn't therapy online, and, you know, where the lines are drawn and this and that, either you're by the book or you're not as well, isn't it? But the other thing that is interesting is that he sets the tone talking about the medical ethics, because that's what we are discussing. But it is interesting to note, from all the way back to the first video that we did, he's saying he's not doing therapy online. So I find it always very strange that we're going to say, look, this is definitely not therapy online. It's definitely not, I'm not medically practicing online. Definitely not doing that. But then all of the concepts of medical ethics are then dutifully from his end and heavily from the other end that are trying to incriminate him in some way. They're all very dutifully and heavily applied. But should they be? Because this is not a medical practice. It's only a pseudo medical practice if we invite people to believe it is, if the people involved think it is, if you pretend it is. Even if you all pretend it is, it doesn't make it a medical practice. It makes it a pseudo medical practice because it's not a real one, isn't it? So even if you all pretend it, but they're not pretending, they're saying it's definitely not. So why are we now applying the medical ethics? But okay, that's just my brain bafflement that I still can't get my head around. Either it's one or the other. But if it's not one, then why have the other? I can't get my head. But this is the premise that we're setting it up from. So I'll just crack on.
If someone else believes what we do is unethical, that doesn't actually make it unethical. The truth is that medical ethics are actually very, very clearly defined. There are standards of practice that are actually codified in state, federal, and international laws. And licensing boards are very specific about what is ethical and what is not ethical.
That's true, totally true. Again, this is a bit of a grey area because you're not doing those things. You're not in those states. You're online and you're not doing a therapy. But I always find that really difficult when we talk about law through a prism, because you are in a particular place when you're online, but you are also online, and what might be ethical and legal in one country might not be in another, but you might still talk to other people in other countries because you're online. So online is like a no country, every country space, and then you've got the personal legal implications of where you live, I guess, haven't you? So that's interesting. Yeah.
So ethics aren't really a matter of opinion. So what are some of the central principles of medical ethics? The first principle is beneficence. So this is essentially to try to maximize the good that we do. The second principle of medical ethics is non-malfeasance. So this is to try to minimize the harm that we do. The third principle of ethics is autonomy. So this is sort of when doctors, we provide information to people, but it is ultimately their choice whether they engage in something or not engage in something. As a patient, you have the right to refuse a treatment, right? So doctors can't make decisions for you. And the fourth major principle of medical ethics is justice. And that's where we try to deliver medical services in a fair way. So if you kind of think about these principles of medical ethics, it kind of like, it sort of boils down to a lot of what you see in clinical practice. So if I'm trying to prescribe a medication, for example, the medication is going to have some benefits and it's going to have some side effects. So how do I decide whether it's appropriate to prescribe a medication or not? So what I do is I'll weigh beneficence against non-malfeasance. Does the clinical benefit from the medication outweigh the side effects or the harm that it does?
So I wanted to just alight on this because I think I'm going to bring us back to this table maybe a little bit later. I don't want to particularly dig into the depth and the detail as such, because I think there's a lot here that you might have to talk through. I mean, just that table is probably an hour's worth of conversation alone, isn't it? To really dig into all the different aspects and angles, and even just open them up and not get anywhere with them. But we're basically saying, look, here is an actual medical framework. It's quite detailed. He obviously knows all about it, I would assume. And if he were to do work with a patient, this is the sort of thing that's coming out in his head beforehand. What I worry about is that's great, but if we're not doing therapy online and you're not doing therapy online and you're not doing, therefore, do you actually refer to this table before you sit down and talk to Mr. or Mrs. or non-binary affix? Before you talk to a streamer, is that going on, or are you just having a chat to a streamer, therefore you don't have to, this bit, no box ticking? I don't know, but it's certainly been brought up here as like a look, this is what goes on behind the scenes when you're weighing up your thoughts regarding a patient, all this stuff. It's not just, sit down and have a chat.
If the answer is yes, then it's sort of a good treatment to recommend. I also, as a doctor, allow people to make their own decisions, right? So we're seeing a lot of this right now in the world with people refusing vaccination, where people are allowed to make their own decisions about COVID-19 treatment, receiving it, not receiving it, and that's a central principle of medical ethics. The last principle of justice is essentially that we as doctors don't discriminate. We try to treat everyone the same. And it sort of doesn't matter that you've smoked for 50 years. When you get lung cancer, we're going to treat you the same as if you've never smoked a single cigarette. So these are some of the core principles of medical ethics. And what I want to dive into next, which is a really, really big question in our community, is what we do therapy on stream.
So he's outlined in his, remember this is a response, and what I like about this is that it's very clearly segmented into these, it's a very clear argument. I wonder sometimes whether he's written this with a lawyer watching over it, or giving it a lawyer's pass or something, because this attack on him brought up some very serious accusation, I suppose, and maybe this is a categorical response that may be important in legal terms, but he certainly knows what he's talking about, and he certainly structures this in a clear and concise way. So he set it up and then he's straight into it. Is what we do therapy? But we kind of already know the answer to this. This has already kind of been answered before, hasn't it? Is what we do therapy? I think Dr. K has been very careful and clear in all of his broadcasts when people mention the word therapy to actually say, no, it's not. We discussed it in our previous, if you want to, where's my mouse? If you want to check out our little, if you go on Ganji Kid, you can check out the full stream log archive. It's on a playlist. So I remember him talking about that.
So a lot of people will sort of look at what we do on stream and sort of assume that this is the practice of therapy. After all, I'm a therapist and I'm talking to someone about their emotions. So is that actually therapy? And I'd like to start by sort of sharing a little bit of a narrative. So when I started Healthy Gamer, the reason that I started Healthy Gamer is I was working with a lot of people who were sort of the digital generation. And the more gamers that I worked with, the more young people I worked with, I noticed I was having the same conversation over and over. In fact, what I noticed was that what was really missing is not clinical treatment. These were not people who needed prescriptions or even psychotherapy. What they needed first and foremost was education. I found myself having the same conversation over and over again, teaching the same things over and over again.
I see where he's going with this. A lot of people who share things, like a lot of the audience on Twitch maybe, who share things like playing computer games or other lifestyle choices, or are in the same environment or seeing the same pressures. Maybe he does see this same sort of conversation come up again, and maybe not all of them are depressed. Maybe some of them just need a bit of guidance in the right and careful ways. And if he could say it to one and he said it to 10, maybe he could say it once instead of saying it 50 times 50 different people. Maybe you can say it once in a video and 50 people will watch it. I see where he's going with this. That's why Healthy Gamer is a good media resource on Twitch, on YouTube, because that's exactly what it is. He's not going to have to bring everyone up individually. He can speak to everyone en masse. Great. But there's a negative in that, which is that if you are stepping into the conversation, we're going to talk about Byron specifically. I'm not going to just pussyfoot around generalities. If you're stepping into the conversation with Reckful and you miss that Reckful is really deeply emotionally traumatized and does require more serious help, because you think he's in this ballpark with these other people who aren't really depressed. If you've spoken to 50 people and and there comes another one, if you're not taking every individual and thinking really carefully, it might be that Dr. K is, right, today on my show, I'm going to spread that message, says Dr. K. I'm going to spread the message that, you might not have depression, and the way we're going to do it is going to speak to lots of people, and it's going to come, and all that. Maybe some of the people aren't fitting into that framework. And that's where the worry and the danger and the problem, I guess, with Byron's story is that Byron didn't fit into that. That wasn't the case at all. And sometimes, certainly the edited segments of the hit piece made it look like Dr. K may have missed certain cues. And it's possible that because he's got this agenda, Not a bad agenda to help lots and lots of people. Not a bad agenda, but because he's talking in more generalities, maybe he missed some of the detail. So that's possible.
So I started to wonder, could I actually help 10 people or 100 people by having a single conversation online? And so as I started to investigate that question, even before I started streaming at all, the first thing that I looked into is whether it was possible as a psychiatrist to have public conversations with people about their mind and mental health. The answer that I discovered was yes, you can, provided you do it in a very specific way. So people may think that what I do on stream is therapy, but the truth is it is actually very clearly not therapy. And what do I mean by that? Let's explore that for a second. So the first thing to understand is that the practice of psychotherapy is very tightly regulated. So I can't just, I can because I'm a psychiatrist, but the average person can't just open up an office and say, I'm doing psychotherapy. In the same way that someone can't open an office and say, I'm doing surgery. So there are some things, psychotherapy is a very restricted practice. And so as a result, it's very clearly defined. So what constitutes psychotherapy and what doesn't constitute?
In the UK, though, you can just open up an office and say, I'm doing therapy with no qualification of any sort. Therapy. It doesn't have to be psychotherapy. And whilst it's very true what he's saying there, that wasn't really the accusation that's been levelled against him. What's the problem is that you don't have to say you're doing psychotherapy if they think you're doing psychotherapy. That's the key. But then I've heard this from him before at the start during conversations with streamers. No, this isn't therapy, be clear. But the worry is, I suppose, from the streamer's end, they don't know what therapy is or isn't, but they're talking to what they think is a therapist. That was the worry, isn't it?
Psychotherapy. The other thing to understand is that therapists are regulated in all manner of ways. So for example, if you go see a therapist, they are not allowed to divulge anything about you, including your name or what's going on with you with anyone else. So when you see a therapist, you are entitled to doctor-patient confidentiality. So what I discovered as I was looking into whether it's possible for me to have conversations online is that what's actually regulated is not necessarily the practice of therapy. I mean, it is, but that's actually regulated under a broader set of ethical and legal guidelines, which is the clinical practice of medicine. So why is your therapist entitled, or why are you entitled to doctor-patient confidentiality with your therapist? It's because they're practicing clinical medicine. Why do we regulate who is allowed to do therapy and who is not allowed to do therapy? It's because we regulate the practice of clinical medicine. We regulate who can do therapy. We regulate who can pull teeth. We regulate who can do surgery. We regulate who can prescribe medication. So all of these regulations are shared, right? So you have doctor-patient confidentiality with dentists, with therapists, with psychiatrists, with surgeons, with endocrinologists or obstetricians or gynecologists. So the ethical guidelines and the regulations of what therapy is and what constitutes therapy falls under the broader practice of clinical medicine. And this is another really important point because my professional training is as an MD. So the laws and ethics that I'm held to as a medical doctor sort of involve the practice of clinical medicine. So what actually constitutes the practice of medicine? So the American Psychiatric Association defines psychiatry as the branch of medicine that's focused on the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders. So clinical medicine is essentially, it's very specific, but clinical...
Okay, I'm just going to pause it for a second. Dr. K does get specific now, and he talks about the practice of medicine. We know that the difference, don't we? If you want to find out more detailed, go and have a look at his video, but we know that he's not practicing clinical medicine by talking to people on streams. So I'm just going to skip over that bit.
Three things. So let's start with the first one. The commencement of a doctor-patient relationship. So I know this sounds kind of weird and it may sound kind of simple, but this is actually very, very clearly defined. So the AMA actually clearly defines what constitutes entering into a doctor-patient relationship.
And we talked about this in previous broadcasts because the grey area is not, it's not a problem that it's clearly defined. The problem is that on stream, when a person's talking to someone who's apparently a doctor, they don't realise that there has to be a contract between the two and an overt statement of patient-physical relationship. They think because they're talking to a doctor, they could be getting something out of it. And that's where the doctor-patient relationship line is blurred in these streams to those people that don't understand this, which is why it's important that he explains it. It's important that he explains it. And we have looked at that in a previous broadcast.
The other things, in addition to the voluntary, consensual entry into a doctor-patient relationship, are diagnosis and treatment. These are the other two pillars of the practice of medicine.
And again, we know from previous broadcasts that he is not going to be diagnosing nor treating people through online streams, but it's important that he outlines his understanding of the process and explains to us all that I think one of the things that is coming through here is that from his side, there's no way this is therapy. There's no way. Why is anyone getting confused? Why is everyone accusing me of blurring the lines between therapy and streaming? It's obviously streaming. I'm talking to streamers. We're having a chat. I think that's where he's coming from, because in his world, you go into the therapy office every day and you see what therapy is, and you do all the research and you know all the things and you've done all the books, and you're so familiar with therapy that you can clearly see the distinct difference between the two practices. But to the streamers, to the uninitiated, to those going through the conversations, we hope that he's made it clear to them. The fact that we know he understands this is good. It is good. I worry on one front that he's saying, look, this is the difference, ergo you can't point the finger at me and say there's a problem with me, because I know the difference. I'm not doing therapy. But I'd rather be hearing I made it clear to them that we're not doing therapy. I gave them the access to this more serious therapy if they wanted it, but not with me, because that would be an ethical problem. I'd put them onto one of my colleagues. That would be important to hear. I'm sure they did do a pre-interview with a lot of these people, and some of these ideas were raised. I'm not party to that pre-interview, so I can't judge it. So he explains the standard of care, the diagnosis process.
C, the interview should establish the presence of depressive symptoms, depressed mood most of the day, loss of interest or pleasure in most or all activities, insomnia, hypersomnia, significant weight loss or weight gain, psychomotor retardation or agitation, fatigue or low energy, decreased ability to concentrate, think, or make decisions, thoughts of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt, recurrent thoughts of death or suicidal ideation or a suicide attempt. Depressed mood that occurs most of the day, more days than not, and is persistent and lasts for at least 2 weeks. Mania. So this is actually the standard that we're talking about. And I don't know how else to say this, but we don't do that on stream because that's what constitutes the practice of medicine. Remember, once again, if we're doing therapy on stream, then we have to adhere to the standards of therapy. How do we define therapy? It's part of the practice of medicine. What is the practice of medicine? These are the standards of care in terms of diagnosing someone with major depressive disorder. And the simple fact is that we don't do any of that, right? I don't do thorough symptomatic assessments. I don't assess frequency, severity, duration. Some of these things may come up in the course of stream, but that is not actually constituting a diagnosis. The next thing that I want to point out is for people who think, okay, do I diagnose things on stream? I don't. And so let me actually show you. So someone talking about their depression does not actually constitute diagnosis. Here are what actual diagnoses are. So this is from the IC.
This is important again, and it goes both ways. It's a proper detailed thing about the diagnosis of depression. I get it. You know the medical ins and outs. And when you say to somebody on stream, if I'm Dr. K and I'm talking to you and you say, when I was young, I felt really depressed over this, that and the other. And Dr. K says, depression's a serious thing, isn't it? So if you want to get help for that, we can get you some help for that. And maybe you can talk to somebody and, tell us about what it's like to feel like depressed. If you have, that doesn't mean you've diagnosed them. I get it. You've got this stuff, this proper medical stuff. I get it. But the person that hears the word depression coming out the mouth of the therapist, they don't have all this framework to rely on. So they might hear the therapist said depressed. I said I was depressed. They said, "Oh, were you? To get help with depression, you will need to do X, Y, Z." I'm depressed. The therapist said I was depressed. I've been diagnosed. To the layperson, the mistakes can be made. I think that's what I'm driving at there. I think that's the main point of that. And I think that's the issue here, is not whether Dr. K understands what a true diagnosis involves. I think the problem is whether the people at the other end understand. We are now being shown very clearly. I hope this sort of conversation goes on with the people before the stream, before they have the conversation online with Dr. K, so that you can say to them, look, this is what it involves. At no point will I be doing this. Make sure you don't have these funny ideas going off in your head, because people can be quite prone to them. And I think that's another issue, is that a therapist worries about this sort of stuff. But I don't think that an online stream conversation, I don't think you have to put all this framework and these thoughts when you're having a chat to someone on stream. So it's a really difficult balance, isn't it? It's a really difficult balance. I don't know. Don't worry if Dr. K won't watch my stream. Don't worry about it. It's important that we complete our investigation into this in a full and fair way. And of course, you know that I'm a little bit biased because I think he's done such great work and it's been so helpful for so many people. But yeah, I think it is fair to say, though, that the fact that Dr. K knows all about this diagnosis and this sort of stuff, it doesn't mean that the people who are going to be talking to do. And Dr. K is used to being a therapist. They're used to being streamers. I don't think anyone's been used to having these conversations on stream yet before, so maybe these ideas didn't come up. But maybe I'm trying to be really fair and kind of harsh in a way as well. Maybe it is Dr. K's duty of care to look out for the idea that they might get these ideas. Another way of framing it would be, if you were a teacher and someone had a crush on you, you might say, look, I've seen this before. Scotty Hotty. You know what I mean? Get those funny ideas out of your head. It goes on. To be ahead of the funny ideas, Dr. K might need to be ahead of this with people. And maybe he has been in his conversations. I don't know. So then he talks about the treatment plans.
Treatment plan. So this is a treatment plan that I just kind of wrote up. It's a fake treatment plan.
So there is a lot involved in treatment. We're not offering it online. I totally get it. He totally gets what treatment is. And that's why streams are not therapy. I totally get that. Again, I hope that this is made clear to the people that are coming to have the conversations, because they don't know that that's required to be treatment. They might think that you saying, go and have a walk. Oh, the doctor prescribed me a walk. I didn't do a proper treatment plan for you. No, you didn't. Do you need to? I just hear what you say and just think it's like I'm being treated. Therapy is a treatment, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's them that's getting baffled, so they need to have these things clearly. And this is what the video is doing. It's clearly outlining that. But I hope that they hear it before they have the conversations.
So this kind of comes down to, do we do therapy on stream? And the answer is absolutely not. And the reason we're able to say that is because therapy is actually very, very tightly regulated, right? It's not a matter of opinion. It's just because Dr. K believes we're not doing therapy doesn't mean that we're not doing therapy. When we set out, we designed stream with these considerations in mind. So when I thought about, okay, what am I allowed to do on stream? What is ethically and legally appropriate to do on stream? The main conclusion is I'm not allowed to practice medicine on stream. Even then, there may be some theoretical situations in which that's possible, but generally speaking, that's the main dividing line. So everything we do on stream is not the practice of clinical medicine.
The funniest thing is, if he wasn't a doctor, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's only because he is qualified to talk about these things that the conversations about them take on a new meaning to the people who are in them. That's the core of it, isn't it? So he's very clear though, and also the definition is very clear. No one can make a hit video and say, you've been doing therapy. I binned off the hit video because I didn't want to see it anymore. That's our little list. I'm not doing a hit video. No one can make a hit video and say, oh, you did bad therapy online, because at no point is it ever going to be, it's never therapy, it's not therapy. So holding us up to the same standards as therapy is also a funny thing to do, maybe. But we all want the best for everyone involved, don't we? That's what we all want, the best for everyone involved. So having these conversations about mental health is important. Someone with knowledge, understanding, maybe experience, but certainly education. These are different people, maybe. Those, maybe get different people, but all those different people's voices need to be heard. So I'm not negative about what's been going on. I'm felt quite positive about it all. Even after Reckful, even after Byron committed suicide, I still felt Dr. K had come the closest to making a difference in his life on that mental health front, and that without Dr. K's intervention, maybe Byron simply may have just done it sooner. So I don't feel that Dr. K pushed him in that direction. And look, the conversations we're having maybe help people in the future, so there's a lot of good to come out of it, isn't there? He makes an effort to say, I'm not your therapist. Yeah, he does. But again, this is the problem, is he knows what that means, because he knows that means I'm not doing these forms, we're not sitting in this room, I'm not practicing medicine, I haven't done the assessment, you're not getting a diagnosis, you haven't done a treatment plan. When he says I'm not doing therapy, he knows that. But the person on the other end, if you sit and talk to it, even if, like, you and I, normal people, if you met somebody on the bus and they said, oh, I'm a therapist, oh yeah, would you like to come around and have a chat? Oh, I'll come around and have a chat. And you sit in their house and you had a chat to them for an hour and then you went home. Well, it's even more difficult because it's in their house and everything, isn't it? But you know what I mean? Like, have I just had any therapy? They're a therapist. We talked about my depression. Have I had any therapy? What is therapy? It's not a pill you can swallow. It's not an ointment you put on. It's a conversation, isn't it? It's a talking therapy. It's a talking cure in the main. In this context, we're not talking about blowing in your ear therapy or anything like that. So in this context, it's a conversation. Therefore, having a conversation with the therapist, isn't that what therapy is? Who draws the invisible lines around it? Who's drawing those bubbles? It's going on in people's heads. So in his head, it's very clear because he knows about all the forms and all the papers and everything. But in the people's heads that he's talking to, it's not so clear, even though he's telling them that this is not therapy. So this has brought that up, that it's brought that into sharper focus, hasn't it? It's brought that into sharper focus. The knock-on effect, it's hard, even then, the knock-on effect is hard to sort of say, right, because of that, you're to blame, Dr. K. You're to blame. I don't think that's the case either, though. So,
in order to sort of figure out what is okay on stream, we can define what the practice of clinical medicine is, or understand the definition. So that's not something we define. That's something that we exhaustively looked up by looking through, hundreds of pages of medical ethics documents, state laws.
He's backing up his thing and he's getting a little bit excited here because this is the accusation that's been made and he's, fighting his point here. But it's also worth noting
federal laws
that he's saying we, and he's going about this law stuff. So I'm sure they must have got you don't do the laws, the federal laws on your own, do you? You get a lawyer involved. And when he says we, a lot of this is framed about we, the channel, not me, Dr. K, taking personal responsibility. But if there is any responsibility to be thrown around, we're going to talk about it in the context of we, the channel, Healthy Gamer, and whoever that is in the back room. But us at the other end, the normal people that just watch it, think it's you, Dr. K. Doesn't matter how many people are in the back room. With me, it's just me. But if I got any people working with me, you might think it was just me unless I brought them on camera and showed you. Do you know what I mean? Even on the telly, it's the late show with so-and-so, but it's all those other people making the show. It's you. You're the front man. You were the one that wanted to talk about mental health online. You were the one that do the Twitch streaming. You're the one taking the lion's share of the money. Sometimes, even if it's a business, a common interest, a group thing, if someone's got their name on it, I think it is a bit fair to say, okay, me, I. But he's framing it with us which is it's a defense thing, you know, it's maybe a legal defense thing, and it's true, it's fair, but it is just a position he's taking.
Regulations, licensing board things, ethics, opinions on ethics from the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and what we sort of decided to do on stream is actually clearly outside of those things. The other simple gut check that I have for y'all is when you go to a doctor's office, how similar is it to what happens on stream? And the short answer is like not at all, right? Because doctors are...
Yeah, absolutely. However, how similar is anything to anything on stream? Because it's a new world, isn't it? It's a new world. Over the last couple of years, locked in with the COVID, people have had all sorts of online appointments, haven't they? So now, actually, well, my last appointment with my doctor, online appointment, maybe it is a bit, who knows? It's technology blurring the lines. We're looking at you. You appear to be in your office. I'm there with you now. Do you know what I mean? It's not virtual reality, but I get taken into his thought space, whatever that is, when we're having that conversation online. So, yes, fair, important, clear point. But also, if that were the case, the only fair balance would be if these people were talking to you, not in your office, but in your kitchen. Do you know what I mean? Or in a restaurant. That way, if you were having a conversation with a therapist at a restaurant, you really wouldn't think it was therapy, even if they said something insightful. I don't know.
We're practicing clinical medicine, and what we're doing on stream is having conversations about mental health. We do not enter into a doctor-patient relationship. We do not diagnose people with medical illnesses, and we do not treat them for medical illnesses. Psychotherapy is governed and regulated, and the ethical standards around psychotherapists are under the broader umbrella.
Yeah, we got that. Stream's not therapy. He knows that. But then he does come on to this next bit. Why does stream look like therapy? So at least he's understanding what I've just said is the main, for me, not for Mr. Girl maybe, not for some of the others, some of the dramatists, whatever. For me, what the main, like, if he's being critiqued, there's something positive to come out of it, which is you can polish up this problem area, you can sharpen up these edges. The main thin end of the wedge for me is that it's the other people don't know. Why does stream look like therapy? Can you get into their minds and explain it to them? Can we get ahead of this so it doesn't happen? That's the ethics are great. He understands them. He's trying to do them, trying to follow them. I get that. I trust him and believe that because it plays out in his actions. How can we nail this down and make sure it doesn't happen again in the future? If there is any sort of accusation to be leveled, let's deal with it.
And we don't treat people. So then the next question, very naturally, is why do people think that what we do on stream is therapy, right? So where does this idea come from? What do we actually do on stream? And are there any overlaps with therapy? So it's a really good question because I don't think most people, like we sort of mentioned, most people haven't studied medical ethics. They don't really understand the definition of the practice of medicine. They're not trained in diagnosis. They're not trained in developing treatment plans or doing psychotherapy. So where do they get this idea that what we do on stream is therapy? So it's a really good question. So what we do on stream is we have conversations with people that are about their mental health, and I use some skills. So I'm a very good listener, for example. I'm very good at asking questions. I'm very knowledgeable about things. So I'll build some amount of an alliance with the person that I'm talking to. I'll be a very active listener, and I'll ask very insightful questions. So sometimes people think that that constitutes therapy, whereas no, that doesn't constitute therapy. So I'll just think about this for a second. There are other professions outside of therapists that do these things. So who builds an alliance very quickly with the person that they're talking to? Who makes very empathic statements and tries to help people open up? FBI hostage negotiators, right? Even customer service representatives.
I didn't know he was going to say FBI hostage. I thought he was going to say like priests or like someone nice. I don't know if priests are nice these days. Who knows? But I thought he was going to say someone nice. But no, hostage. Well, I get what he's saying. Like, that's not the just using conversational techniques. It isn't therapy. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's another reinforcement of your point. Yeah.
If you've been on a talked to a customer service representative recently, you may have noticed that they do some of the skills that are, generally speaking, what we think of from therapy, right?
Now, I think this is because it was actually leveled at him in the hit piece that you use these skills. These are the skills of a therapist, and you're using these skills to sort of, oyster shell. I'm vegan, so I wouldn't be doing this. Oyster shell, we'd open the oyster shell and crack the shell to get to the juicy bit. You're trying to crack these people with your skills. So that's the sort of accusation that's been leveled at him, which is why he's directly hitting this head on, that I use these conversational skills because I'm building an alliance, he says, and being empathetic with people. That's just like, a thing that people do. Fine, that's fine. It doesn't mean it's therapy. Fine. But there's an issue here with this, which is, why does stream look like therapy? Because I'm using empathetic statements is not exactly true. It's because there's more to it than that. It's because I am Healthy Gamer. I am a therapist. I'm promoting mental health online, and I'm coming to you to have a conversation with the context of mental health, and I'm a therapist. It's not about whether he asked this and that question. This is all this other stuff, isn't it? That's why stream feels like therapy. Maybe it doesn't look like therapy in the traditional sense of the word, but maybe non-traditionally, yes, it also looks like therapy. Whenever you're sat there in your big chair, unless you're going to be in a completely abstract context, like at a restaurant or in a kitchen, or I don't know why it's food for me, but unless you dramatically change the context so that people say this couldn't possibly be therapy in this context, it could be therapy because it's two people talking and one of them's a therapist and the other one's talking about their feelings. So that's why it could look like therapy to any uninitiated observer. And I think it's a bit unfair to not sort of say that, or maybe he doesn't get that well-rounded view of it because it's him in the middle of it. There was another point I wanted to make as well.
Right? Even customer service representatives. If you've been on talked to a customer service representative recently, you may have noticed that they do some of the skills that are, generally speaking, what we think of from therapy, right? They'll make like very empathic statements. Oh, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. So this is like really important to understand, but just because I'm a very good listener and just because I'm very good at like asking questions and making observations and reading body language, that is not what actually constitutes therapy. In fact, these are skills that are used by all kinds of people. So executives, for example, will get like interpersonal training and training in relationships and communication. So these are skills like communication skills between people are things that I absolutely do on stream, but I don't do anything medical on stream. And oftentimes, because people don't recognize or understand what constitutes the practice of clinical medicine, which isn't really a problem because you're not going to learn that unless you go to medical school.
Okay, we're going over that again. Yeah, going over that again. But that wasn't exactly the question, was it? Why does stream look like therapy? Because the answer is, to the uninitiated, therapy is a conversation. I've sort of said it. I'll just quickly, I'm not going to keep repeating myself, but therapy is a conversation between two people, the therapist and the client. And that's why. The question therefore is, what have you done behind the scenes to make sure that that illusion that people have has been shattered, clearly and critically shattered, before they sit down to have the conversation? That would be the question I would then ask, I guess.
Or you engage in some other kind of clinical education. It can look like what you imagine therapy is, because what do you imagine therapy is? It's like what you see based on media and TV shows and stuff like that. Whereas the truth is that the practice of clinical medicine is completely different.
Yeah. So we got that, but we haven't managed, like, between the 2 points, they're both sort of saying the same thing in a way, aren't they? That was what the hit piece was saying about it to him, was saying, look, you're not really doing therapy if you are, but he's not, and he's not. So great. And then he talks more about relationships and skills, what we can and can't do on stream. And then we get to the actual meat here, the informed consent and stream process. So let's get to this, please. Come on, the internet.
One on stream. So the next thing that I want to talk a little bit about is the actual stream process. So how does someone come on stream? What are the protections that we use? What are the standards that we hold to? And so this is where there's another really important part that I want to talk about, which is kind of an ethical standard that we hold ourselves to, which is informed consent. So before people come on stream, they meet with a producer, and the producer sort of lays out with them what stream is, what's allowed, what's not allowed. We make it very clear to them that this is not the practice of medicine, that Dr. K is not your doctor, and we make sure that they agree to that. So we go through an informed consent process. So if there's any confusion there, or they're looking for some kind of medical advice, that's where things end, right? So we inform them, and then we go through the consent process. And this is where...
It's important that he said that's where things end. He said that if they come to him and say, look, you've just said this to me, but I'm here looking for actual therapy. It's all well and good you're not doing it online and all that, but I'm here for actual therapy. He says that's where things end. They don't have them on the stream. They don't have the conversations. They don't go any further than that. Probably will refer them to a therapist, but very clearly has stated then that, because it was leveled as, we've done a whole video on it, informed consent. That was our last episode. Informed consent, we've got a whole video on it. So it was leveled as a really serious accusation about this informed consent, that maybe these people didn't know what they were getting into. So I'm trying to make it as plain English as possible. People don't know what they're getting into, and you're a clever doctor, so you could start talking about things, and all of a sudden I'm talking about my deepest, darkest secrets on stream, and I didn't realise I was maybe some of that as well. Maybe there's some of that as well. But what he is saying here is very clear, isn't it? And it's been very clear from the start. So I'm glad that's cleared up.
The ethical principle of autonomy comes up. So we at HG believe that a human being, an adult, who wants to come onto the internet and voluntarily talk to someone about their mental health should be able to. We believe that human beings should have the autonomy to make their own decisions.
The problem, of course, and I do get a bit of an uneasy feeling, because this is obviously someone's response, isn't it? He's not called it a response, but it is the ethics response to the accusation hit piece and the following drama. So he's definitely fighting his side a little bit here, and that's great, what he said there.
Voluntarily talk to someone about their mental health should be able to.
That an adult, should be able to talk to somebody about their mental health voluntarily online, live on stream as an entertainment show. Yeah, fine. We can talk about whatever we want. Absolutely. But the question is not whether the streamers are at fault for doing so. The question is whether you have set them up in some way for a fall, not deliberately, not trying to push them anywhere, but as the doctor, that you're going to get a bit of juicy mental health stuff. You're going to get your views, you're going to get your clicks, you're going to get your channel going on, helping people, whatever it is, yeah. But them, if they're a grown-up, they've walked into the bar, if they've gone out drunk and fallen over, that's up to them. Do you know what I'm saying? If you come into the restaurant and you eat all that food and then you go out and you have a heart attack, that's up to you. Isn't it? You're an adult, it's not my fault. But I am serving all the greasiest, dirtiest food, and I am, pouring all those double vodkas down. Yeah, get another double. Are you sure? Should we make it a double, mate? I'm doing that, and then you're left as an adult to. I get that. Could it be that Dr. K here? Could they be basically saying that he knows better than those streamers, and so should watch out for them? Maybe this is talking about mental health, isn't it? This is talking about mental health and ethics, so maybe you should be watching out for them. But then again, maybe he shouldn't, because he's not a doctor in terms of, he's not their medical practitioner. He's someone having a conversation with them on stream about mental health, with all these caveats that come before it, that we've said to you, look, we're not doing mental therapy, we're not doing help, we're not doing medical practice, and all that stuff that we just talked about, said to you beforehand. Eyes open, are you ready to have the conversation? But then is it fair to then say to them, well, at the end of it, you're a bit of a mess, so well done you didn't have your eyes open then, did you? You've ended up as a bit of a mess. Well, there's an uneasy feeling about that, isn't there? There's some uneasy feeling about that. But I do like to think that Dr. K had those uneasy feelings himself, and when he felt that somebody was in distress, he offered them some ongoing support, not necessarily from himself as a therapist, because he can't. Remember, there's all those ethical implications, but maybe referred them to, you know, people they could talk to in other contexts, or in a medical context specifically. So yeah, maybe that.
We believe that human beings should have the autonomy to make their own decisions. So out of respect of that autonomy, we want to make things very crystal clear. So we have conversations with them. We also give them the opportunities to set boundaries on anything that they don't want to talk about. So this is not something where once they come on stream, they're also allowed to set boundaries in the middle of stream if they want to. But they're allowed to say, hey, I don't want to talk about this on stream. I don't want to mention this on stream. I don't want to mention this on stream. So what we essentially do is go through a rigorous, informed...
That's good that they do that. Rigorous, informed consent process. Great. The problem is, if he's saying to me, what don't you want to talk about on stream? Well, I'm not going to say the thing that I don't want to talk about to you, because it's this deep, dark secret that I don't want to talk about. I'm not even going to bring it up in this pre-conversation. What's that horrible thing that happened to you when you were a kid? I don't want to talk about it. What is it though? Well, I can't. If I don't name it, you don't know not to talk about it. So during the process of the conversation, he might say, oh, and then this, and then what about this? And you start to get to the area of the thing you don't want to talk about, but you can't say, oh, this is the area of the thing I don't want to talk about, because by saying it, it draws a line around it. It starts to name it. That was that problem that girl had, wasn't it? I don't know which girl it was. It was in one of our previous episodes when they were saying, they basically said that something had happened to her. It was clearly someone close to her had done something to her, but she didn't want to say it out loud on stream because it would have put her in a difficult position, because she was obviously still around that person. So that was the gist I got. And he kept sort of probing at it. And then when he finally realised, he went, oh, no worries, you don't have to say anything. Is it about this? No, don't say anything. Is it about this? So it seemed a bit of a, in all the hours of detailed and human conversation, in all the hours they managed to pick out that little 10 minutes. So sometimes it may happen. It's difficult, isn't it, being human? Him trying to do his best. Whatever you don't want me to talk about, tell me, I won't talk about it. The people on the other end thinking, well, I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to talk about it. Maybe him as a doctor has to find some way past that. It's difficult. It's so difficult. It's creating a new media concept, isn't it? Mental health media. I'm part of it. I'm doing mental health media right now. This is why I wanted to have a really good look into this and conversation about it. So,
consent process where we explain very clearly this is not a doctor-patient relationship, and we make sure that they're on the same page. If there's any confusion there, we either resolve that confusion or we sort of stop, right? Because we are not going to practice clinical medicine on stream. So here at HG, we actually hold ourselves to a very high ethical standard, despite the fact that we are not engaging in clinical activity. So on stream, I don't practice therapy because it's very clearly defined, right?
Yeah, we got all that then, yeah? We got all that. Then there's some approved IRB studies and notes on some stuff that I don't know about. Maybe there was some other stuff thrown up in this drama that I didn't know about. This Ayurveda, so I don't know about that. Talks about the creation of Healthy Gamer, which is interesting.
As a simple example, the World Health Organization in 2020 released a report which sort of emphasized that mental health is in crisis.
So, I agree with all this stuff, absolutely. And then he comes on the final section now. He starts to actually come on and directly make his points. And the first one is a little bit interesting, hate farming. I didn't know I was watching a hate farmer with Mr. Girl. I don't know if Mr. Girl is a hate farmer. I worry about coining phrases for things that involve mental processes. Certainly you can see the result of the media, whether it's a hit piece or not. You can see if someone's content is built up of hit pieces. Yeah, so hate farming might be a term we can coin, I guess. But, negativity in the media has always existed to sell papers. People have always been mean about people because they're bullies. Bullying has always, even on the schoolyard, attracted some group mentality, some group think, hasn't it? Bullying goes on. I've been critiquing another streamer who was a bully, Kavos, in my We did a video about that chuffer who keeps eating all the food, didn't we? What's his name now? I can't even remember his name. Big chuffer keeps eating all the food. And Kavos had made a video about him. And Kavos was being a bully, essentially. And his whole channel is just, oh, have you seen this? Oh, point the finger at that. Oh, bully, bully, bully. Oh, they're different. They're different. Are you not part of the cool kids? Are you quite different? Are you something that we can be negative about? Is everyone being negative? What they do, these hate farmers, before Dr. K gets into it, I'll say my experience. They see something that people already hate. Everyone being mean. Nikocado Avocado, that's it. They were being mean about Nikocado Avocado. Absolutely find this on Ganji Kid. Absolutely find this on Ganji Kid. Look, if I show you this on the channel, you scroll down and you go to Ganji Cuts, Ganji Arts, and you check out the videos on Ganji Arts. And there it is, Fat Jesus, Nikocado Avocado, Genius, Kavos Bully. There it is. Absolutely check that out to see the context of what I'm talking about. So, a hate channel will see something that is negatively popular, like people are hating on it, and they'll go, alright, everyone's being a group and pointing their finger at this thing. I'll join in. I'll bandwagon that shit. Kavos does it. He bandwagons stuff. And the great thing about it is you're already in the popular group. No one's going to say negative thumbs down to your video because they're already there pointing the fingers and being bullies. But so you bandwagon something that if you jump on the bandwagon that everyone's already being negative about, I'm the big one saying the thing that everyone thinks. Well done. Way to play to the crowd. A certain aspect of a crowd that is not necessarily beautiful or constructive. Yeah, way to play to the crowd. So that goes on. It certainly does. So let's see what Dr. K's got to say about it.
And one of the key interventions. The next thing that I want to talk a little bit about is something that's a little bit more negative, and that's hate farming. So there's been an increasing and disturbing trend on the internet recently of people sort of being increasingly critical and essentially farming hate. And I want to talk a little bit about what we've learned sort of in terms of our platform and sort of the reach that we have and how we try to behave in an ethical manner. So as a content creator, I feel like I have a duty to use my platform for good. The unfortunate thing is that there are some people out there who will use platforms essentially for negative reasons. So they'll hate farm or criticize or things like that. And like I've said, we're actually completely open to criticism, assuming that it's sort of fair and based in fact and is well cited.
Important that you made that point, because I was going to say, you got to be able to have criticism. Some people are negative in their general outlook on their channel. It's what gets you in YouTube. It kind of forces you to be a certain way. If I'm an example of it in a way, and I'm not the best example actually. I'm a terrible example of this because I'm quite different in quite different broadcasts. Sometimes I'm angry about something, and sometimes I can really enjoy it. So because I'm human like you. Yeah, but what YouTube expects of you is to, people like my negative video about this topic. I'd better make another one, and I'll make another one. And if I'm making negative videos about a topic, a great example is World of Warcraft, or name your favourite game, whatever. Oh, I'm not happy with the way things are going in this game this week, and have you make your negative video. If people watch it, they come back for the second one. You make a positive video and say, do you know what, these are the things I really like, and it's not even about World of Warcraft, it's about cows. I really like cows. Then they're going to be like, what's this on your channel? It's positive, it's not your voice, that's not the voice I'm coming here to listen to. It's about cows, this should be World of Warcraft, mate. So YouTube won't have that. YouTube wants you to maintain a persona in your content. Doesn't matter what kind of persona. If you're going to be Keemstar, you've got to be Keemstar though. Keemstar can't suddenly come on and start being nice to people. Do you know what I'm saying? So, hate farming and having a critical presence. I mean, you can look at people that people really enjoy the work of, like, I'm talking MMOs, so I'll say Kira TV, I'll say Josh Strife Hayes, and to an extent Asmongold. People who critique, but aren't necessarily hate farming, but they are critics. Aren't they? That's where it comes from. The old critic, they watch the thing, they consume the media, they eat the dinner, they tell you what they think. And if it's bad, if you're a negative sort of voice, people look for that, I wonder what so-and-so says about it with their negative voice. Do you know what I mean? Like what faults have they picked out of it? Are they right? Maybe not. I don't know. It's just a way of being, isn't it? It's just a way of presenting content. So some people will definitely present critical content. Maybe debates, maybe discussions, maybe jumping off points. I do that. I'm not a hate farmer, but that's not all I do. So I'm definitely not a hate farmer. But I can see where you could push it, because I just said at the start of this, Kavos was a hate farmer. Every one of those videos that I looked at on their channel, I'm not even going to bother bringing it up because I don't want to pay them the mind anymore, but it was all like, this is the popular thing that everyone hates right now. Karens. Is it Karens right now? Or is it, who are we bullying this week? What's cringe? That's all. They're all pointing the finger at them. Right, great, I'll take a little video of them, put it on the internet. Everyone hates them. Everyone hates them. Ergo, they like me. They like me from my place of privilege. Yeah, Kavos, I don't like him. So hate farming does exist. It does exist. I'm a hair farmer, that's right. Grow it all myself. Bake it into pies. Don't sell many.
So we're completely open to criticism and quite responsive to criticism like that. Unfortunately, what we're seeing on the internet is an increasing amount of toxicity, right? Like we can all feel that the internet is becoming a more toxic place. And so what I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about how I've come to understand hate farming and sort of what goes into it.
So this is really his kicking the nuts of Mr. Girl. He's saying Mr. Girl's a hate farmer. A lot of these people that made negative videos about me are hate farmers, and I'm going to kick them in the nuts and expose them. That's this little bit. I'm going to let him have his due in a minute. But there is one more really important point I'd like to make, which is that when ethics inform your life, because we're not talking about just being online here, we're talking about life. I'm hoping that Dr. K, walks the walk in the same way as I do, and ethics inform his life. I'm vegan for that reason. It was explained to me through a conversation that, it makes sense. If my ethics are X, Y, Z, surely I should A, B, C. So, I'm quite happy to live in an ethical way. That's, again, I see what he's saying, because with my content, with the content, I could choose, I make choices. I've decided not to make the negative stuff. It's not just the negative stuff that gets popular. It's not just that. Mr. Beast isn't negative, is he? So you don't have to be some negative chuffer to get popular. But I've seen lots of negative things be popular, and I don't want to be an online bully. Don't want to be spewing out hate. Definitely not. Definitely not. And if I've got a choice, I've been making, I make vegan propaganda videos instead of right-wing racist propaganda, please. Do you know what I'm saying? That's where I'm at. So I do agree with that. I think you've got the choice in your heart. Everyone's got the choice. It's important we don't just give up and say, oh, everyone else is doing it, I'll make a buck. I'll just do what everyone else is doing. It's the easy way. I'll be a hate farmer as well. It's probably more profitable. I bet I could be more profitable. So, I'd rather give up that profitability or popularity or whatever it is, stick by my guns, stick by my ethics, always try and do the right thing. And it's mainly the right thing for other people as well, isn't it? It's not just for yourself. It's not just for yourself. That's the main thing, isn't it? Love thy neighbour. It's trying to help people, isn't it? That's what he's doing. So I respect that. That's what we do here every Monday, 8 p.m. GMT. Today was a bit of a difficult one for me to get on, even without the uploading and that. But I'm here, trying. I'm trying to put my effort in, and I'm putting it in this direction, not in that direction. So I respect this. Yeah.
So the first thing to understand is that hate farmers usually are operating on an emotional level. And the main emotion that they sort of target is a vague sense of righteousness. So when you watch a video by a hate farmer, what you'll often find is that it's very emotional in nature, right? So it's going to have very powerful imagery. It may have sort of a very strong title, may have sort of a very powerful thumbnail. And as they sort of as they start to weave their narrative, what you're going to be feeling is some sense of outrage or irateness or things like that. And the more that hate farmers kind of engage your emotions, right? Because that's what it's about. It's about making you angry. It's about making you grab your pitchfork. Let's all grab our pitchforks and down with the bad guys.
I think actually there's another aspect of it, which is the pitchforks are already raised in some contexts, and the hate farmer just comes along and farms up all that feeling. They don't necessarily start the wave. They just ride it, I think, sometimes. Maybe not in this particular case, but certainly. And the other thing that I wanted to say was that jeez.
That's sort of the emotions that they engage. What they're sort of doing by
Oh yeah, is that when we make our thumbnails for this, I'm trying to engage people's emotions. If you go to our playlist, look, the thumbnails are all the most crying picture of Dr. K. I've got Reckful in there. You know, I feel a little bit, I'm not monetized, so I'm not profiting off it financially, so I feel a bit better. And also, we're trying to do good by mental health, but we do want people to click and to watch, so you have to appeal to these visceral, emotive things. And the reason is because that's what the landscape of YouTube has pushed us into. And the reason is because that's what people click on. It's human, isn't it? So you have to sort of, even if, importantly, I have tried not to make this whole conversation, these 4 episodes, about, I've not tried not to lace them with too much strong, emotive pitchfork waving. Either way, try to be fair and balanced and nice and calm, because this is Mental Health Monday. I don't want people to go away all worked up and angry, and absolutely not on either side of the fence. Even though I have a bias to Dr. K, and made the thumbnails look, they might make him look bad, the thumbnails. He might not like them, but it's just to get people to watch the video, because that's what you have to do on YouTube. That's the bottom line there. And if I didn't do it, it wouldn't. I've seen the difference. Bear in mind, I've spent years on YouTube not giving a shit, not doing a thumbnail, not having a not just on this channel but on other channels. I've not played the game for years. I know the difference. I do want these videos to be seen, so I have to play the game. There is that, and it's sad, isn't it, that the YouTube game forces that out of us. But I'm not a hate farmer. My videos are quite the opposite. They're calm farming.
by doing that is sort of ignoring any kind of real criticism. So oftentimes there are different kinds of critical videos on the internet. Some are very well sourced, well cited, kind of offer balanced perspectives, and hate farmers usually won't have that, right?
I will address this in chat here, just even though it's completely out of context. You know that I predicted Johnny Depp, didn't I? I had that hat. Now, if I was still doing that hat routine, that was a year ago I was doing that hat routine, a year and a half. If I was still doing that hat routine now, biggest thing on the internet, wouldn't it? I decided not to. I decided not to do a Johnny Depp live stream. I decided not to turn it into a big character. Yeah, and now down the line, I've decided not to have his live. I don't want to revel in he said, she said, someone's airing their dirty laundry in public, domestic violence. None of that is tastes nice to me. So I'm not making Johnny Depp videos. I've stayed well off it. But you knew it, I knew it. But you knew it, but I had a hat on stream doing an impression of him. I was just a bit before my time. Just a little bit. If I keep pitching things a little bit before my time, eventually I'm going to slow down and bang, we're going to hit it right on trend. We're going to trend. But I was over a year ago, and I didn't even cut it into a little video or nothing. Just had the character going on stream for a little bit as a little bit of light. I say light. It was a little bit of light entertainment, a little bit of diversion. Anyway.
So they'll usually have some kind of narrative where they sort of will find a bunch of information on the internet. And this is where it's challenging as a content creator because, we've probably streamed for well over 1,000 hours. And if you go through all of the content that we've done, you can stitch together basically whatever kind of narrative you want to.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true of most content creators, I would say. Most. And not absolutely though, actually. You couldn't stitch together any sort of narrative that I was a racist, because I categorically have not. Even if you you'd have to cut one word up at a time. You couldn't cut a few clips of mine and build a case, because I'm not, so I don't. You can't critique me for being sexist, because I pick myself up on it all the time. When I use the word he instead of they, I'm always on that, trying to set a good example, trying to talk it through mentally so it becomes a habit. I'm always doing that. The only thing you could negatively throw at me is that I've been smoking on stream sometimes. And it's not illegal. Well, not in your country, it's not. But you know what I'm saying. I'm a good guy, so I'm not worried about accidentally slipping up. I just never worry about that. I just don't care. even if people came back from my past and told you all the worst things I'd ever done, they wouldn't be that bad. There's nothing that bad. I've been a bit of a naughty chuffer sometimes. But no one's going to go, oh God, that changes the way I think about him. Like, you know, we've all had our highs and lows, I suppose, but like, yeah, like, I'm not worried about that, you know, not worried about that. Next year's going to be a big mud. Yeah, you're right, actually. We're right on trend with that. And I should tell you this, I've cut a short of a mud flood short of her saying about that termite mound. And I'm going to drop it. I've got an idea that I'm going to drop it just before our next Tartaria broadcast. And hopefully it will all kick off at the same time. And I've been followed by one of them as well. That's a different conversation for YouTube. That's a YouTube conversation. Let's finish this off. Mental Health Monday. We're allowing Dr. K to have his say. He's kicking them in the nuts about their hate farming, for one.
So a really good example of this, if y'all haven't seen it, is Dr. K interviews Dr. K, which is when someone takes clips of me and like stitches them together as if I'm having a conversation. So you can sort of clip things into context to weave whatever kind of narrative you want to. So the first thing to understand about hate farmers is that they work primarily on an emotional level and will really sort of encourage you to get your pitchforks out.
And I don't necessarily think this is fair on Mr. Girl completely either, because Mr. Girl did just take the evidence, you know, the bit where he asked that girl about that problem area, the bit where he, you know, missed the cues from Reckful, where Reckful sounded like he was using the word therapy a bit too much. You know, you've got to if you're going to make a case against someone, you've got to be able to allow them to choose their evidence. Yeah, I think that is, you know, I call it a hit piece. It might be a collection of evidence, whatever you want to say, a case. Yeah, but just like Johnny and did an Amber in the bed. I left myself a little Amber in the bed this morning. Just like Johnny and Amber. You know, that's your case, but there is another side to the case. Maybe, you know, maybe we need to hear all sides before we can accurately build up a judgment. But what the hit piece seemed to be doing was just casting one side or small segments and saying, right, because of that, everything that's it, done. Didn't seem to be, you know, that casting that wider net.
They may make some kind of narrative argument which sounds very logical at the time, but this is where oftentimes what hate farmers do will come up with a priori arguments. And what does that mean? And that means that the judgment actually precedes the collection of evidence. So I'll go into a little bit more detail.
That's not just hate farmers, that's if you're making anything in media. Go and get me 5 clips of them looking like a chuffer. All right, go find them. You know, I'm writing a thing, it says this, I need you to find me 5 pictures of that. It's the same with the Tartaria things, isn't it? You know, same with the conspiracy theory things. And like, they're just gathering their pictures. They've already got the idea, they're looking for something to correlate and fit with their video. Because you're making a chuffing video about a thing, not because you're doing a fair, balanced investigation, and because you're making a video about it. So if I'm going to say cows are piebald with black and white, you know, black patches on white, cows have piebald colouring, then I'm going to need some photographs of them. I'm not going to get pictures of the brown cows, I'm going to get the piebald ones to just put on the... Oh no. That's the one I'm going to look for when I'm scanning the evidence for supporting evidence.
There. So oftentimes if you look at people who are critical and people who are hate farmers, they sort of assume guilt at the very beginning, right? So they haven't really done an objective investigation. Something has happened and they've sort of decided that you're guilty.
And this is where I don't know about giving it a... I'm, you know, arguing against what Dr. K is saying here. I don't know about giving it a name and saying this, because that's a thought crime. They've ascribed guilt. Did they? I don't know. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they found all this stuff first and then decided to make a video because they thought, you know, I don't know when they decided to ascribe guilt or how or if they have. That wasn't up for conversation. That wasn't a conversation that was being, you know, had by them. They weren't saying any of those things. They were just saying this is the hit piece. So it could be assumed, but it's not definite. So I don't like, you know, assuming what people are thinking. You know, it might be they don't even think you're guilty. It might be they just want to make the hit piece to get the money or whatever. But this is something that people do is they assume guilt first and then move. Yeah, and probably the reason is because the bandwagoning thing, like I said earlier, when people are already starting to wave fingers, when people are starting to get a little hate campaign on their Reddit or whatever the thing is, people jump on a bandwagon. I do agree with that. And then those people that are bandwagoning, those Cavosses of the world, will then say, right, I'm going to make a hit video on this, get me all the things about that. Yeah. Again, I'm going to make a hit video doesn't necessarily mean I think they're guilty. I need to change the world by taking them down. It's just whatever's going to get the most clicks. The hate farming is farming. So whatever's going to get the most clicks, isn't it? Why's the relaxing music stopped, you chuffer? The hate farming is farming, so you're going to be doing whatever gets you the most clicks. Can you play the music? What's wrong with you? Right. So if it was the case that, laying on someone else next week, if Dr. K wasn't going to get you so many clicks, if nobody really cared, they wouldn't do it. Even if you were guilty as sin, even if you've been caught running around with your trousers down and all that business, they don't care because you're nobody. But if you're somebody and your big clicks, if it's Johnny Depp this week, they're in on it. Bang, clicks. Hate farm that. Whatever people are big on hating, they're going to hate farm. So it might not be that they care about guilt in any way. But certainly the mob decides, or the popular opinion is that guilt has been ascribed, therefore the hate farming can start. But it is important to note that what he's describing, hate farming, like I said, it's farming. You can whip up hate, you can create demand. I could make a video about something and no one's ever heard of it before. I could make it up off the top of my head. I go on computer games about stealing people's socks. Sock. It's got to be negative, hasn't it? It's got to be something you can get angry about. Sock injustice, sock-based injustice, the injustice of sock-based injustice. Maybe socks are a bad one to choose. But I could start making videos about the evil people that make these socks out in their evil sock shops, sweatshop shops, and the people in the sweatshop shops haven't even got socks themselves. And we can start going on about it. Maybe it is worth being angry about those sweatshop shops. Or maybe I can make you angry about the old ladies that knit socks and they're knitting socks and they're putting people out of business who should be selling sweatshop socks because, whatever, you can put your energy into it. If everyone else is not going to get involved or care, it's not going to take off, I suppose. So I don't know. I just feel like I've talked enough about that now to let it run.
And then something really tricky happens is that once they've decided your guilt, they'll start collecting information. The problem is that on the internet, search and the way that you collect information is going to probably reinforce your biases. So I'll give you a simple example of this.
You don't have to give me an example. I know what you're saying. If I search for something, it's going to come up with loads of stuff that, it's not going to say, oh no, you're wrong. If I search for Dr. K bad man, it's not going to bring up all the Dr. K good man stuff, is it? It's going to bring up all the bad man stuff. Yeah, I get that.
Stumble upon some idea and then it actually shapes the questions that they ask. And once you shape the questions that you ask, you're going to shape the responses that you get. And this is precisely why if we look at a scientific standard of how to collect information, making Twitter posts is not a good way to collect information. So
Again, I don't know who made the Twitter post, but obviously someone's made a hit video. They've asked Twitter, have you got anything on this guy? And he's obviously being specific there, isn't he? I get what he's saying, though. I don't know if it helps us to fix the issues, though. That's the big worry. I agree it's not nice to be the victim of a hate campaign. Seen it myself. I had the people on the ASMR channel, oh, why don't you kill yourself? Why don't you kill yourself? Oh, brilliant. That's nice every morning. I'll stop looking at that. So, I know what it feels like, and you want to answer back, but it doesn't actually fix the actual thing, which was... do these people feel like it's therapy? Have they felt like it was therapy? Did you do enough to make them not feel like that? I'm satisfied with his explanation that they have these conversations beforehand and they do a sort of a welfare check beforehand, that they go through these questions beforehand and people have been told it's not therapy. And, I'm satisfied. I'm quite satisfied. But Why would anyone say that to another person? Yeah, I know. It's just what it was just children bullying. Like they jumped on a bandwagon, just like I was saying about all this. You know, I don't feel like, oh no, someone's. I just think like they just next week it was someone else's bandwagon. There are still a few that still like to come back on that band, who still feel really strongly about it, about, you know, something so petty and minor. Yeah, and maybe I acted like a bit of a cock. You know, I didn't play the YouTube game. I said what I thought. I was like, right, fuck you. I say what I think. You know, they don't like that, do they? So whatever. You know, whatever. But it says it's not just about them though. It says it's the culture. It's the culture, isn't it? It's the culture. Since then, things have changed a bit on the internet, and cultural leaders like Asmongold make much more clear points. Like Asmongold would never have done that to me, but the people that they were, whatever, you know, different people, whatever. Asmongold didn't do it. Nobody in that community did. The ASMR community is full of lovely people. But anyway, what I'm saying is that it is this cultural thing online, isn't it? He's saying it as well. And there is a problem with it. Yeah, he's mentioned Twitter. Of course. You know, welcome to the internet. There's a huge problem with online bullying. Absolutely. People who get their teeth into it will make these a priori arguments against you. Got that? Yep, agree. Agree. I mean, that's talking about the motivation behind the video that attacked him, really. Again, great, but not necessarily nailing this one thing that I'm still worried about, which is people get the wrong end of the stick when they're talking to a therapist online. How can we fix that to go on into the future, so we really can have deep and meaningful ongoing mental health conversations with people online, but not do them any damage? Because I thought for someone to go online and talk to somebody informed and educated like Dr. K for hours about their mental health would leave them in a more positive place. But we've learned it can have its drawbacks. It can, the reason they've got these ethics surrounding it, because it can be dangerous. So can we use this to pivot off and say, right, that's how we can fix that? I don't know if I've got the answer, but from Dr. K, who's a really intelligent, smart, maybe he can talk to more intelligent, smart people, maybe we can come up with an answer, because ongoing in the future, people will have these conversations online. They will. So maybe we can come up with a framework. I said this before in one of our other episodes. Maybe the answer is that we come up with some sort of framework, we, me, him, us, the internet, for having conversations about mental health online and go on into the future and actually able to help more people and just close that trapdoor, close that you know, I'm talking about hazard prevention here, you know, clean up that spill hazard, that slip hazard of people could get the wrong end, clean that up, get these guidelines, these things in place so that we can go forward and really help people. I think that would be good.
You'll also sort of occasionally find people like experts. And so this is really important to understand. A collection, like stringing together a group of expert opinions, does not actually constitute evidence. So let's remember that tobacco industries were able to find dozens of physicians who, under oath, swore that cigarettes did not cause lung cancer.
Absolutely, that's why I smoked today. And this is, you know, directly at that Mr. Girl. He's saying like, you got expert therapists on your video and they said things. So what? There are other experts that say different things. I don't know, man. I don't know. That is like saying, because the experts on the Mr. Girl video did seem very well read and, you know, very excellent. They did seem like they knew what they were talking about. And I did agree with a lot of the things they said. They didn't say Dr. K is bad because of this. They said these are the outlines. And he said some of the things he said today have been in agreement. He's agreed with them about the outlines. So,
Let's remember that there are anti-COVID information dissemination platforms out there that find medical doctors who say that vaccination is a mistake. Stringing together a couple of experts, which is what hate farmers will do, right? So they'll give you the appearance of evidence. And the way that they'll do that is find a couple of credentialed people who agree with them.
Again, you're talking about they'll give you the appearance of evidence. It might be a categorical way to state it. Maybe it is or is not evidence. But what's important, I think, here is that I can't see in their heads. So maybe they think that is evidence. You know, maybe that is their evidence. That is what they're presenting as evidence. So I'll take that as, it might not be admissible as evidence. It might not be valid, but that's their presentation. That's what they're calling their evidence. So I'm not going to be so presumptive as to say they know it's not evidence, they're deliberately doing it to trick the idiots who watch the videos. They might just be an idiot as well, or it might be that we're the idiots and it is evidence. I'm just going to say I don't know on that one, because I'm not that authoritative on what does and does not constitute a full case of evidence, because we're not having a court case.
But they're not going to include people in the video who disagree with them.
That's true. That's why we're doing this. Absolutely. I didn't agree nor disagree. I wanted to be fair on both sides. I'm able to present you disagreeing here, Dr. K, so I'm glad that we got to do this. And I think that's why I look into it. I keep referencing it if you're coming here for the first time. That's why our full set of streams, when we put them all together, are going to be really good and really cover this, and really hopefully, maybe we have to do one more where we get some experts and ask the questions. How do we make sure this doesn't happen in the future? Maybe we have to do that. But otherwise, we've done a really good, thorough looking at this. So I'm really pleased that we have.
Right? That's just not part of the narrative that they weave. And so what ends up happening in that the tools that hate farmers use is they'll sort of start with kind of some clickbaity stuff, right? And then they'll engage your emotions, and then they'll, based on their selection bias, will collect a bunch of information, and then they'll string that information together. And it sort of makes sense, right? Because if I make a tweet about, I'm trying to figure out why the moon landing.
He's saying the moon landing. I was going to say it's funny because this is what the conspiracy people do. That's what they do. They just string a load of stuff together.
Was a hoax. And I'll get 50 people to respond to me, and then when I make a video about it, I'll take the 10 strongest people and I'll stitch them together. And now what I've done over a 1-hour YouTube video is I've made a very strong case for a particular thing. But this is why...
So now you're saying it is a strong case. So it is a strong case.
I remind you that especially when it comes to some of the criticism that we've faced, it's not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of law, right? These things are very clearly designated.
And that's a problem because we're not in the court of law. We're in the court of public opinion. We're on Twitter. We're on Twitch. Birds aren't real. That was a conspiracy, wasn't it? A fake conspiracy. A conspiracy of a conspiracy. This is difficult for Dr. K though because we are not in the legal. We're not fight. Mr. Girl didn't fight him on a legal premise. Fought him in a public opinion sort of premise. And like Johnny Depp and Amber in their trial at the moment, it veers into that area. But that was a legal trial, and this is, again, it's not even in that area, is it? It's on Twitch, it's on Twitter, it's people's opinions. It's not legal facts. Must be really hard for him to have thought so carefully about all those legal and ethical implications, and then for people to just say, oh yeah, but I think you're doing a bad thing. On this other thing, I just get this feeling you're a bad un. Is that what racism is? Is that when it's racist, when people ignore things and just, come to a negative conclusion? It might be because they're racist. I don't see into their heads, so I can't judge any of that. But what he's saying is that people may have suffered this selection bias.
And we are in compliance with these kinds of things. So when it comes to hate farming, be a little bit careful about this stuff, right? Because this is happening more and more on the internet.
And the way you can be careful about that is to not be jumping on any sort of bandwagon. And if you feel like, hang on, am I pointing my finger? Am I being rude to somebody? Am I being mean to somebody? If it was happening to me, would I feel upset by this? I've said I didn't water off a duck's back to me when people say mean things on a comment. But you know what I mean? If it was happening to you, would you like it? Would you enjoy it? Would you solicit more of it? Or is it not really the sort of thing that, be nice to people, isn't it? Be nice to people.
And oddly enough, I don't even necessarily blame these people because I don't know that the people who make hateful videos have done any kind of training with how to formulate a good non-biased research question. That's something that, I learned through 4 years of getting a master's in public health and some amount of as an MD. Generally speaking, formulating research questions is actually a very technical and difficult thing to do. So I think what's happening is people will sort of come to an a priori conclusion. They already decide that something is bad, and then they'll sort of ask questions in a way that reinforces their bias. This is why the internet is turning into echo chambers, and this is what's leading to toxicity. The last thing that I want to talk a little bit about is that unfortunately recently we've been the recipient of some hate farming. This is hit close to home. And one of the things that really bothers me about these hate farmers is not necessarily the personal attacks, but their decision to include Reckful in these videos.
Yeah.
And what actually really kind of pisses me off, to be honest, is not even that they included Reckful, but the picture that they paint of him. What really bothers me is that in order to attack me, what they've managed to do is they spin this narrative about Reckful as like someone who is like easily manipulated and like couldn't kind of think for himself and stuff like that. And that's actually what bothers me the most.
I wonder if that's the way he sees it. I haven't watched all the negative videos, I've only watched the one, but I didn't get that impression necessarily, because I have my instinctive feelings about Byron, having watched him over the years. So I don't know if it was, because I already knew he was very, very smart, that I couldn't possibly have seen that argument from them, because it wouldn't go in my head. I know how smart he is, but smart doesn't make you any less vulnerable to, not manipulation, but influence. If you believe someone is credible and you respect them, putting a lot of stock in the things they say, it doesn't, not because you're smart or you're dumb or whatever, it's just human again, isn't it? So bit difficult on both sides there, but I totally agree with what he said though at the very first point, is that they've framed it all around Reckful. Obviously Reckful was the one that killed himself, wasn't he? The one, he's not the only one. It's the highest, it's the thing that kills most people. It's the thing that kills most young people under the age of 30 or something like that. Do your stats, have a little look at the stats. I'm not going to dig them up now. Obviously what I will do is refer to the Samaritans 116123 for free, and Lifeline 988 in America. But yeah, I found it very distasteful that some months, maybe a year was it? I don't know. Some time after this tragedy, it was all brought up again. And Reckful's legacy, the reason that on our little section of videos there, the thing that kicked it off for me again was the Reddit place, and they did a little memorial for Reckful on Reddit place, and I thought, yeah, now I can say my thing. I've been wanting, it reminded me that I wanted to say this thing about Dr. K and this thing, and I thought, yeah, it's been a bit of a time now. That's what we need to be doing, memorializing Reckful, not tearing apart his memory by kicking the shit out of the people that tried to help him. So I did find it very distasteful the way they made their videos and framed them, utilizing somebody who had committed suicide, a great and a shining light. The light that burns brightest burns for half as long, don't they say in Blade Runner? And that's how I kind of feel about Byron. He was one of those people that was just so amazing. It's sad that he's not still with us being amazing, isn't it? So for them to do that, to just take that, I don't know how they thought of him, or whether they can. Again, it's this ethics that goes deeper into the heart, isn't it? When I'm making a video, I talked before, haven't I, about my ethical pass, where I do a watch of the video, and because I'm going to make videos, I've done a cut about that woman, the homeschooler. I'm calling it Karen's homeschool. I'm having a joke and a point and a finger and a point. I don't know, I'm doing it, but I've got to be careful not to do it too hard and too mean, and to offer some compassion at the end, and to sort of say, well, funny ideas, but you could be helped. Do you know what I mean? You're not a bad person just because you've got funny ideas. I'm trying to be careful not to bully people. Yeah, because I don't, I care about how people feel. So I wonder whether those people, when I finish editing a video, I do a watch through and think, is that how people would feel? Okay, that'll be okay, and then we'll put that out. Even if it is a bit mean. Whatever. But for somebody to make a hit piece and to dredge up somebody who's, committed suicide in that hit piece, who's being hurt here? Who are they hurting? Certainly not necessarily just the people they're trying to hurt. Maybe they're hurting other people around them, other people that aren't involved. Maybe it's very distasteful to do that. So that was, an important point.
Is that in order to attack me, they're actually portraying a picture of Byron that is completely inaccurate. If you knew Byron, which I did, and he was a very close friend of mine, the dude was brilliant, right? He was incredibly independent. He was fierce with his views. He was fierce with advocating for himself. He was strong. He was a force to be reckoned with. And he was an absolute hero of the internet. And so what really bothers me the most is the way that they're portraying him as some kind of weak victim. Byron was an absolute beast, right?
He was not a victim. Dr. K did not cause him to be a victim by treating him like a victim. I'm at the end of all this, I'm saying Dr. K did not dig in, get the juicy bits, fuck him off. Like, did not use him and manipulate him and exploit him. I'm saying Dr. K didn't. That's my feeling on it all. And I agree with all these things, but I also think it's very important to note that even the strongest people, the reason that Reckful was this amazing person was because he had that vulnerability, because he had that honesty, because he was prepared to be himself no matter what, and because he could stare into the void. As much as he could stare at the stars, he could stare into the void. So it's this beautiful tragedy of certain genius people, but not just genius, but just people, just human people that don't think just someone's strong or because they're smart or because they're whatever, that they don't have vulnerability and they can't be hurting and they might not be scared or lonely or depressed or suicidal. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's where I appreciate what Dr. K's. I mirrored those emotions and reflections of Byron, but I want us to be very clear that it doesn't mean, and I think Dr. K is missing a point here, that it's not fair to say just because he's strong and brilliant, I couldn't have done him any harm. No one can. He's Superman. It all bounces off him. That's not... Remember, what we're talking about is, did he perceive you with such respect, in a position of such high regard, that you could say something and it could affect him, and you might not realise how it's affecting him, because you're not trying to do the therapy, you're not thinking carefully enough. And Byron's a delicate, vulnerable person who thinks this is a very therapeutic thing that's happening. Remember, it's that. And in that, yeah, you can be so powerful. Byron can be strong and he can be intelligent and all these things, but you can still hurt him, and you can still reach into his heart. That's important to know. Not just Dr. K, us, all of us. That's a big important message. Stream's been jumpy since I changed my internet provider. Do you know what, Nigel? I don't know if I'm going to have to look into it. There is an issue today because I am uploading. I don't know if that affects it. I'm uploading the Stanley Parable video, and it's taking forever. And I'm going to look into it because I can't continue with jerky internet. I was hoping it was just going to resolve itself, but it might be the internet. I don't know if we changed provider or if I just changed Sky box. I think I already got my internet from Virgin, but now we've taken the thing out of the wall. We've plugged in different things. Yeah, I didn't want them to touch it. I didn't even want them to touch it, but they had to. So we'll look into it in the future. It's something I'm not happy with, that I'm not going to accept as an ongoing aspect of the stream, but I'm not going to do it now. Bottom line. Bottom line. And I'm not that educated enough to speed test. Don't even start me on that. There's more to it than a speed test. And yeah, if I'm uploading something, it should affect the speed. But I wasn't uploading anything yesterday when we streamed, and it did it then as well. So I don't know. It might. I've got to do Mental Health Monday, and that thing's got to upload. So that's what's happening now. And if it persists into next week, then we will not accept it, because we want a proper quality. We do, and we are moving towards it. Every step, every stream should be a step toward higher quality and better production and content and everything, shouldn't it? So we are moving towards it, just not in leaps. Let's finish this.
Reckful Gladiator was an absolute beast. On stream, he brought so many people together. How was he able to do that? It's because he was so damn smart, and he was so critical with his thinking, and he was so open about his struggles, right? He inspired so many people to get mental health treatment. And what sort of bothers me the most is that in all of this discussion of Byron, no one is sort of talking about what Byron did for us, right? Because the truth is, he did a ton for us. And I don't just mean me, I don't mean HG. What I mean is like the internet, the Twitch community, the gaming community. And so this is where I want to talk a little bit about sort of ending things almost on a personal note, because like the way that our relationship has been misconstrued is very like hurtful. And the truth of the matter is that Byron and I never entered into a doctor-patient relationship, right? We were friends.
We know that, but that was part of the problem, wasn't it? Because at one point he said, I don't know if I want a friend or I need a doctor. And that was part of the hit piece. But at least he's clear about it, even if it was an issue.
We were professional colleagues. We were both streamers. That's the nature of our relationship. And one of the things that I've really come to appreciate is that as a professional streamer, I have a responsibility as a content creator. And what we try to do at HG is use our platform for good.
Now listen, I'm going to stop. It goes on to make his mission statement here. I'm going to finish it with this. Yes, that's exactly right. You have a responsibility. As a content creator, you have a responsibility. The way your stone drops in the water and the ripples that it creates, that's on you. Yeah, I think that's so important. That's why I create content. I feel that responsibility, not just to create content, but in life. We all as humans have that responsibility in life. And it's hard day to day. You know, you get grumpy, you get angry and fed up or whatever. It's hard day to day, but that is our responsibility in life, isn't it? To think carefully about the things we're doing, why we're doing them, how they affect the people around us and society in general. That's why I'm vegan, for the animals, not for my own good health, but for the animals and for society. You know, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is, yes, I totally think that is bottom line really important. Really important. Have we fixed the conversation about mental health online? No. Have we fixed the conversation about how we have conversations about mental health online? No. Has this brought something into sharp focus? Absolutely. And what is that? It's that we need to have an international, in the same way as they look at online bullying and, you know, there's new things that are coming up because of the way we communicate, and we're just about getting to grips with it. I think we should have an international commission for the promotion of a positive framework for conversation about mental health online. I think people like Dr. K could really be, you know, forerunners in that, and we could lay the groundwork so that people because anyone can pick up a stream, anyone could switch on a stream. I've just done it, haven't I? You know, a year ago, I just switched on the old computer, said, right, here we go. Anyone could be doing it, and they are. I tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of pedo hunters. That's such a terrible analogy, but you know what I mean. Like, anyone can go out there and do anything on the mobile phone these days, can't they? Let's have some parameters. Let's have the experts tell us. Let's have it made clear, and let's make sure everyone knows it, so that what can come out of this is that someone can sit down today and say, right, I'm going to be talking to my friend so-and-so about their mental health online, because we could be doing that. I've got a friend who wants to come and sit here and talk about his mental health, but I've got to think about all this as well, haven't I? I do. Somebody else might not. But the people that don't think about it, when they click, right, mental health conversation, OBS, let's get OBS open, let's get Twitch, maybe there's a document, a framework, a video, something that they've all seen. You know what I mean? Maybe mind.org in connection with Dr. K. Maybe Samaritans or Lifeline in connection with Dr. K. Here are 10 important points to think about before you start talking online. Here are the 10 guidances. Do you know what I mean? The ideas. Then get on with it, because we do have to get on with it. We will be doing it. We're not going to hide away from it. It's going to come out. We're going to talk about it. There are going to be people that try and exploit it. There are going to be people that use it to advance their careers, that use it as a I conquered mental health and you can too, and buy my book, and and all that. There are going to be people that do that, but there are going to be people that really care. And there's going to be a crossing over of the two. The people that really care get into this sort of stuff because they care. So it's going to be a new world of ideas and emotions, and humans at the core of it are going to be involved. So maybe we need to do something maybe me, I should contact him now and say, look, this is my point. Because this is what it's boiled down to. This is my point. Is we can do something to remedy that confusion in the long run. Good. I'm glad I've said what I've said. Right, if streaming is still, we're going to be YouTube streaming tomorrow, 2 p.m. GMT, and if it's herky jerky on there, I'm going to be like, ugh. And then Twitch streaming later in the week for some more Genshin. And if it's herky jerky again, because one of my Genshin streams was herky jerky, I've noticed in the edit, so if it's herky jerky, ongoing, there'll be issues, and I will be resolving them. But when I say resolving them, I mean, I don't know. I really hope it just goes away on its own. So you be good, my little podcast. You be good, and I'll see you tomorrow for some potentially conspiracy-based fun, or it might be prisons. We might have a look at some prisons tomorrow. You never know. It's all dependent on how the dogs are though, and what's going on with my time and scheduling. So got 2 dogs to look after. Right, you be good, my little puckos. With that, I've got to go marching around the block picking up poos being dragged from pillar to post.